Everyone in the Soviet Union knew they were being watched by the Committee for State Security, or as it was better known to the world as the KGB. How did we live under those circumstances? What did we do to avoid running into the KGB? And what happened when we did? Let's talk about it today. From the earliest age, our parents taught us that someone in power was always watching us. Many people remember that there were scenes like these from the Soviet Union when a mom was walking holding her little child by the hand, and if the child misbehaved, she'd stop and warn, "I'll call the policeman, and he'll take you away." My mom loved telling her friends about the time she decided to punish me, so she grabbed my dad's belt. Back then, dad's belt was the go-to way parents disciplined kids in the Soviet Union. I just ran away from her and said, "Touch me, and I'll call the police to take you away." Well, we got what we were taught. The KGB was part of our lives from a young age, starting in school. Everyone knew that the school principal or the deputy principal for social affairs were under KGB supervision. And if, God forbid, someone overheard us saying something bad about the authorities, or saw us dressed the wrong way, or acting in a way that stands out, the principal and teachers would be the first to find out. They were obligated to report it to the authorities.
When I was a student, because I had excellent grades, I was awarded a trip to Yugoslavia. For me, being a young guy of 21 or 22, getting the chance to travel abroad was just unbelievable. As I was getting ready, you could say I was already packing my bags. Someone suddenly knocked at my door. I opened the door, and there's a guy in a tracksuit. "Hi." So I look at him, but I have no idea who he is. Maybe we work out together or something, or maybe we've met before. He says, "Can I talk to you for a second?" And then he's the one inviting me in, not the other way around. I step out into the hall, and without a word, he just pulls out his ID and shows it to me. Silently. I'll never forget that emblem, shaped like a medieval shield with KGB written inside. As soon as I realized, he goes, "Relax, relax. It's fine." Honestly, these words, the KGB, spies, they just terrified me. Right away, he said, "We know you're planning to go to Yugoslavia." I said, "Yeah." I immediately got what was going on. That was it. Then he said he had some instructions for me. He wanted me to be their representative. It was like he handed his responsibilities over to me, I guess. So my job was to keep an eye on everyone, be present at all times, make sure no one slipped away, anyone talking to foreigners, who they were, where it happened. I had to write it all down and report it. Of course I wondered, why me? What did I do to deserve this? He just shrugged it off. "Let's not get into that now," he said. That was the end of it. After I talked to him, the fear really hit me. The stigma of being linked to the KGB really upset me. I always kept away from them, always kept my distance, because I really didn't like them, to say the least. But now I had to do this. Imagine I was just 21 or 22, so this whole atmosphere that I'd built around myself, kept drawing all these lines, setting my own limits. I wouldn't let myself do anything. That's what I thought at first. No girls, no partying, no gambling, none of that stuff. But that was just at first. But later, because you're still young, fear doesn't really grip you. So in the end, I did everything anyway. There were girls, there were conversations, and even talking to foreigners. I didn't care. Even if it came down to it, I wouldn't say a word. I was at every party, every conversation. Things were pretty wild. The KGB wouldn't have liked it because I was having so much fun. Our supervisor was an older woman. She was part of our small circle. She quietly told us, just within our group, someone here is spying for them. So watch what you say. Don't say more than you have to. I just sat there, eyes wide. Come on, really? What? No way. And she said, I know from experience. People like that exist. I sit there thinking, I'm in real trouble now. What a mess. Naturally, when I arrived, when we got back, I didn't say a word. In the end, we went back from Yugoslavia. Fortunately, there were no suspicious incidents or situations that might have interested the KGB. None of that ever happened. There was nothing that would attract the spies' attention. I was just lucky.
It's well known that people in the Soviet Union liked to discuss issues in the kitchen. But that wasn't because it was particularly convenient. It was that the kitchen was always full of noise. And to really talk about serious matters, people would run the tap for background noise, hoping it would cover any listening devices, or they'd put on the radio and talk over it. Again, to cover up their own conversation. Serious conversations rarely happened indoors. Everyone understood these gestures. This one meant there was someone nearby. Or this gesture. Or this one. Be quiet. Someone might be listening. We always glanced at the light bulb, since we'd all seen spy movies and knew there might be a bug inside. It might sound ridiculous now, but that's how it was. It got to the point where we couldn't even trust our friends. And if a group needed to talk about something serious, everyone knew the code phrases. Let's go have a smoke, or let's go for a walk. Because that was the only way you could speak openly about anything that actually mattered.
I was about 12 or 13 still in school. We were in class when the head teacher walked in. She stopped the lesson and handed out pieces of paper. Then out of the blue, she started dictating. It was just 3 or 4 random sentences, trying to figure out what was happening, so we just wrote it down. It turned out that at one of the local movie theaters, someone had written a big slogan, "Down with the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, long live the SS." There were also fascist symbols. You know, like that lightning bolt shape? So the KGB started trying to find out who was behind it. Imagine every single school in the city. Every class had to write these sentences as dictation to identify the kids who did it. Turns out the phrase was written by a child. I don't even remember if they ever found them or what happened to the parents in the end.
In the Soviet Union, having a telephone was a real luxury. And to get one at home, you had to spend at least 10 years on the waiting list. But of course, phones mostly went to Communist Party members or to people whose jobs required them to always be reachable. But those lucky enough to have a phone all knew one thing. If you were just having a normal conversation, no one really cared. But if you wanted to gossip or talk about something sensitive, you'd pick up the receiver. You hear the sound, right? Carefully listening for those telltale clicks, because clicks meant someone was tapping your call. Everyone knew that. Sometimes, as a joke, when making a call, people would say, "Comrade Major, I'm on the line."
When I served in the Soviet Army out in the Siberian taiga, conditions were tough. At that time, I was often assigned as the duty officer's assistant. Once I had a phone call with our own regiment. They were about 200 kilometers away from us. We were just chatting about this and that, how things were going, how life was, how our health was. Then my fellow soldier tells me, "Get ready, the chief of staff is coming back." It was a short assignment, maybe a week or 2, and I said right away, "Well, looks like tough times are ahead for us." In other words, things were about to get rough. It may sound strange, but we kind of ended up using all the old Gulag slang. In the Gulag, the head of a camp was called the master. So we started calling our chief of staff the master too. He didn't even know my real name. No one knew my real name. Everyone called me Batya, Dad, I guess because of my build. I was respected and people listened to me. The name stuck, Batya. We had no idea that a regular guy like Batya could have his phone calls tapped. Turns out it was the regiment's special department listening in. So what exactly is the special department? Basically, it's the KGB just embedded within the military unit. They called in our chief of staff. After that talk, the chief of staff got into serious trouble. Dealing with the top brass from the special department was a real ordeal. Their first question was, what kind of name is Batya anyway? What is this? The mob to you? This is the Soviet army. This is a proper military unit. Why the code names? Master? Where did you get those from? It was an unpleasant talk for him. In the end, he still got himself out of it, and he did it pretty well. I don't know the details. He just blamed the warrant officer for everything. There was this warrant officer. He must have been over 50. All he said was, they called him the Batya. What else? He could barely move. He walked with a cane, most likely. He kind of mumbled something. Anyway, he promised he'd sort it out. That's how he managed to get himself off the hook. I don't even know how it all wrapped up in the end. But either way, he really got in trouble. And later, when he called me in and talked to me, he already knew exactly who I was. They really scared him. And then he tried to scare me too. And he made a very clear threat. God forbid you could end up in jail. How long do you get over there? Kolyma's just 2 hours from here. After that, it's just Magadan, nothing else. It sounded scary. After that, I warned everyone in the unit that all our calls are monitored and checked. After that, we never talked about stuff like that again.
In the Soviet Union, amateur radio was really popular because it was the only way to connect with people outside your own city, or even in other countries. I even went to one of those clubs myself. It was called the Radio Club. The first thing we did at the radio club was listen to a lecture about that we weren't allowed in the radio room. Unless an adult was present, we couldn't do anything without the supervisor watching, and I'm sure the supervisor was monitored by the KGB too. My grandfather was the principal of a village school and a decorated teacher of the Soviet Union. And even though he held such an important and respected position, he always wanted to know what was really going on in the world. So when I would visit him as a child during the holidays, there was a giant radio in his room, and we absolutely weren't allowed to touch it. At night, Grandpa would sit down and press his ear to the speaker, and searching for stations, we knew never to bother him. I later learned he was trying to get Radio Liberty, or Voice of America, to find out what was really happening in the world. When my grandfather got too old to live alone, my parents decided to move him to the city. When they finally convinced him to move, his only condition was that they buy him a new radio just as big as his old one, so he wouldn't have to give up his habit of listening to foreign news. Even though he knew, as a school principal, he could be severely punished for it. Typewriters were also closely monitored in the Soviet Union. Everyone knew who had access to the typewriters, and that it was safer not to type letters on them. Even if it would be much quicker, they'd write by hand instead. That's because every typewriter was registered with the KGB, and each one had its own unique typeface. And as for writing, even now we've all kept that habit. Whenever we go through old papers or go through letters, we always tear them up. It's something we just can't stop. We have to destroy any documents. There were rumors, and I think they were probably true, that even the janitor in your building might go through your trash while sweeping outside and report anything suspicious to the authorities.
There were 3 of us, all friends. We had already finished our military service and were on leave. Then another guy joined us, just messing around and taking pictures. So my friend Pavel, I still don't know how, but he somehow brought a bayonet back from his army service. You know, the kind that attaches to a Kalashnikov rifle. We were just messing around taking photos. He clenched the bayonet between his teeth like a pirate and posed for a photo. It seemed harmless, just a photo, just some drinks outdoors. We swam, joked around, and that's all. Then Pasha comes over and says, "Guess who just came to see me?" I could tell from his face something was off. I asked, "What happened? Who was it?" He said, "What do you mean?" "Yeah, a KGB officer came. He asked me about that photo and what else I brought. It looked like the officer really scared him. I thought all his relatives must have died that day. He looked absolutely miserable. Even though we were all in the photo, it didn't affect me or anyone else. But it really hit Pasha and hit him hard." That's another issue. How did the authorities, KGB, even find out about the photo in the first place? There were 4 of us. I had nothing to do with it. Volodya wasn't involved either. And then there was the 4th guy, a photographer. Later, we started thinking about him. It was probably him who let the wrong people see the photo. I came to a conclusion that even in times that seemed to us bright, good Soviet times, even among friends, you had to be very, very careful, and you had to always watch your words and be careful what you say.
My mother worked at the photo studio. One evening, she came home and told us about her co-worker, the photographer Alexei, was very upset because the director of Household Services Combine had called him in and gave him a harsh warning and gave him a reprimand. The thing is, Alexei was still very young. Trying to earn some extra money, he started quietly taking photos. He photographed the covers of foreign records, which, while not officially banned in the Soviet Union, were nearly impossible to buy there. Seafaring sailors would bring them in and resell them. Anyway, he made prints of these covers. He sold them discreetly through friends and acquaintances for a certain sum, just to earn a bit on the side. The director told him he'd let it slide this time, but it was a warning. This must not happen again, or he'll have to report it to the KGB. He also said, "If you weren't such a good photographer, then I'd have no choice but to report you to the authorities. But since we don't have enough photographers, I'll let you off this time." You couldn't trust anyone. Yes, Alexei shouldn't have done it. He was making money, but he still sold it all through people he knew. Turns out someone snitched on him. In the Soviet Union, everyone dressed almost exactly the same. Everything was centrally supplied. Huge factories made the same clothes and the same shoes for everyone. Imported goods were very rare. But of course, young people wanted to look different. And that's why jeans were the #1 thing every young person wanted. You couldn't just buy them in stores, only from black market dealers. And if an old lady in your neighborhood spotted a young guy walking around in jeans, she could easily report him. So officials would ask where he got the money and where he got the jeans.
When I was very young, everyone, including me, dreamed of owning American jeans. Honestly, it felt almost impossible. In my city, there was a big textile factory. It was called Bolshevichka, and they came out with this fabric. It was more or less supposed to look like that material, the one they used to make jeans. But close, you could see the quality and look were nothing alike. You could say it was kind of similar, but honestly, it was nothing like it. During the conversation, they told me, "We've got this fabric that's just like denim, and soon we'd have jeans exactly the same as the originals." Then they showed me the fabric. When I touched it and took a look, honestly, the only thing I could say, since the factory was called Bolshevichka, I just blurted it out. "Yeah, this is Bolshevik trash." As soon as I said it, I got scared. I was scared by my own words. And my only hope was that none of the people who were present at the time would repeat what I said or report me to the KGB. If anyone who heard me had reported it, that would have been the end for me. I'd have been in trouble. That one really scared me. I was just a kid, 15 or 16. And it was my own words that scared me, and the fear that the wrong people might hear you.
When we were young, we had very little of the information we wanted, and there weren't many books that we could actually get our hands on. We were always eager to know more. And for us, extremely popular Samizdat underground self-published books. These were books that were often typed or even copied by hand. Books like Nabokov's Lolita, or even Bulgakov's The Master and Margarita. And many others were shared hand to hand, only among trusted friends. I had some of those books myself. You could only borrow them for just a day or two at most. The pages were completely worn out, and we'd read these books at night, just to discover something interesting. But we also knew that if we got caught with banned books, we could go to prison. But that didn't stop us. Still, there were cases when people actually went to prison for having those books. Of course, in a short video, it's impossible to share everything we felt. In the Soviet Union, life was always under the watchful eye of the authorities. We'll be sure to dive deeper into this topic. If you're interested, let us know in the comments and tell us what life was like in your country. Subscribe to our channel, support us on Patreon, and thanks so much to everyone who already does. Your support really means a lot. I'm Julie, and this is Soviet Born.
И до новых встреч!